Welcome to our session on TypeScript, specifically focusing on type guards and narrowing. First, let's introduce TypeScript. Think of it as JavaScript with superpowers. It helps catch errors early by enforcing types in your code. Next up, we'll dive into understanding what type guards are. They're functions that help narrow down the possible types of variables, making our code safer and more efficient. Then, I'll walk you through implementing these type guards, showing practical examples like using instancef or typeoff. We'll cover the syntax needed to write effective type guards. After that, we'll explore how narrowing works with type guards. Essentially, it's about refining your variable types based on conditions. Finally, I'll share some best practices to ensure you use these features effectively in your TypeScript projects. Let's get started. Welcome to our introduction to TypeScript. Today, we'll dive into the powerful feature of type guards. So, what is TypeScript? It's like JavaScript with an extra layer of protection: type checking. This means that even though TypeScript compiles down to plain old JavaScript, developers can catch errors early by defining types for variables and functions. Types in TypeScript are versatile. You have primitives like numbers and strings, objects, arrays, unions, the works. Now, let's talk about type guards. These help us narrow down the possible types of a variable during runtime. For example, if you check if a variable is a specific type using a function, TypeScript can then assume that variable has only that type within that scope. This makes our code safer and more reliable, perfect for both front-end and back-end development. So, let's explore how to use these type guards in your projects. Hello everyone. Today we're diving into the world of type guards. You see, in TypeScript, type guards are like magical tools that let us tell the compiler, hey, I know this variable is now definitely a specific type. We do this with which checks if an object is an instance of a certain class. Or we can create custom functions using or to check for property existence. This helps TypeScript give us better autocompletion and catch errors early on. By narrowing down types, we can make our code more precise and maintainable, especially when working with conditional statements. Hello everyone. Welcome back to our TypeScript tutorial series. Today, we're diving into the powerful feature known as type guards and narrowing. Specifically, let's focus on using as a type guard. In this example, we have two classes, user and its child class admin. Our function takes an unknown input and uses to determine if the user is of type admin or user. If it's an instance of admin, it logs processing admin user. Otherwise, it logs processing regular user. This is a great way to narrow down our types based on specific conditions, making our code more precise and easier to maintain. So, when you're dealing with polymorphic classes like these, can be really handy. Stay tuned for more TypeScript tips. See you in the next video. Hey there, folks. Welcome back to our TypeScript tutorial series. Today, we're diving into the world of custom type guards. These are super useful functions that help us narrow down the types of values in our code. Essentially, a custom type guard is like a little detective, checking if your value matches a specific type and returning true or false based on its findings. For example, you might have an object and want to check if it has certain properties before using them. You can do this by creating a function that uses or other conditions to confirm the type of the value. This helps us write safer and more robust code. So, let's get into some examples and see how we can put these type guards to work in our projects. Hey there, welcome back. Today, we're diving into custom type guards with the check in TypeScript. Let's break down this function. First up, we have a function called, which takes an unknown value and returns true if that value is of type string. It uses the operator to check the type of the value. If it matches, we return true, indicating that the value is indeed a string. This is incredibly useful for narrowing down types in your code. For example, here we're checking if hello is a string and logging it is a string. When it is, this kind of type guard helps you write more robust and maintainable TypeScript code by allowing you to make precise type assertions within your functions. Hey there, folks. Welcome back to our TypeScript journey. Today, we're diving into an essential feature called type narrowing with type guards. Essentially, a type guard is like a detective in your code who figures out what kind of data you're dealing with. For example, if you have a variable that could be any type, you might use to check if it's a string or to see if it's an instance of a specific class. You can even create custom guards using the keyword or the keyword. This all helps TypeScript understand more about your data, allowing it to give you better type checking and auto-completion in the rest of your code. Let's look at some examples together to see how this works in practice. Hello everyone. In this tutorial, we're diving into the keyword, which is super handy for type narrowing in TypeScript. Essentially, it helps us check if an object has a certain property, and based on that, TypeScript can narrow down the possible types of our variable. For instance, let's say you have an object called, and you want to ensure it has a property before accessing it. You could write. This way, if it doesn't have a, TypeScript won't complain because we've narrowed down the type within this block of code. It's a neat trick to make your type checking more precise and avoid runtime errors. So next time you're working with objects in TypeScript, consider using the keyword for cleaner, safer code. Welcome to our discussion on using the in keyword for type narrowing in TypeScript. This is particularly useful when dealing with interfaces and objects that might have varying properties. In this example, we've got two interfaces. One for a regular user, which has a username property, and another for an admin, which extends the user interface and adds an admin rights property. Now let's dive into our function. We pass in an unknown type of user, then use the in keyword inside an if statement to check if the admin rights property exists on the user object. If it does, we log a message indicating that this is an admin user. Otherwise, we process them as regular users. This technique helps us handle different types within our function based on the properties they possess. Hey there, fellow coders. Today, we're diving into a super useful feature in TypeScript, the keyword for type narrowing. Think of it as a magician's hat. You put on your wizard hat and transform an object from one type to another with just a sprinkle of. For example, if you have an object that could be any type, but you know deep down it's actually a string, you can use the keyword to tell TypeScript, hey, trust me, this is a string. It's like saying, object is string, and suddenly TypeScript believes you. This helps make your code more precise and avoids those pesky type errors. So next time you're unsure about an object's type, give the keyword a try. Happy coding! Hey there, everyone. Today we're diving into an essential feature in TypeScript called type narrowing, using the keyword. This is super useful when you want to check if a variable has a specific type and then use that type information within your code. Let's look at this example. We have a function which takes something of type. Inside, we're using the keyword to assert that is actually of type. If it is, the code inside the block will run here, logging processing user to the console. This technique helps us ensure our code only runs when certain conditions are met, making our program safer and easier to understand. So, remember, use for type narrowing to make your TypeScript coding more robust. Hello everyone, welcome back to our TypeScript tutorial series. Today we're diving into type guards. Essentially, type guards are a way for us to narrow down or guard the types within conditional statements. Let's take an example. Imagine you have a variable that could be any type, including numbers and strings. But in your code, you want to handle only one of these types at a time. You can use a type guard within statement like this. If type of my variable equals number. This tells TypeScript, hey, I know for sure that here, inside this block, is a number. It's like telling your code to switch from a broad category to a more specific one. Now, type guards can also be used in statements to handle different types of data based on their actual types, making our code both safer and more precise. Alright, let's dive into how type guards work in a statement. Here we have a function called that takes an type as its parameter. Inside the function, we're using two different type guards to narrow down the possible types of. First, we check if is an instance of the class using the operator. If it passes this guard, our console will log processing admin user. However, what if isn't in? That's where our second type guard comes in. This function returns a Boolean indicating whether is of string type. If the first condition fails, we check if is a string. And again, based on this result, our console will either log processing admin user or processing string user. This way, we can handle different types of inputs more precisely and safely within the same function. Welcome to our best practices for using type guards and narrowing in TypeScript. First, Keep your type guards simple by focusing on just one check at a time. This makes them easier to understand and maintain. Second, use descriptive names that clearly indicate what the function does, like or. Avoid unnecessary narrowing as it can clutter your code and make it harder to read. Lastly, always document your type guards with clear explanations of their purpose. This keeps your team on the same page and makes your code more maintainable over time. In today's lesson, we've covered the key takeaways on type guards and narrowing in TypeScript. Type guards let you narrow down types at runtime, making your code more precise. You can use or even create custom type guards with or keywords. This helps improve type inference and auto-completion, giving you better development experience. It's important to implement simple, focused type guards for readability. Also, don't forget to document them. Finally, practice using these in real-world scenarios to truly master the technique. Let's dive deeper into each of these points next time.